This video is to give you some directions about proper microscope drawing technique. You do need to use these techniques as you're doing your letter from Leeuwenhoek assignment. The majority of the points for that assignment are going to be allotted to whether you use these techniques properly. Less of it is going to be allotted to whether you really know what a globule is or a pellet or things like that. All right, so follow along with your drawing and labeling handout. This year it's yellow for my group, and as we go through, I'll be telling you some things to pay attention to on the image on the screen. So first of all, the drawing does need to be done on unlined paper. You cannot do a drawing on notebook paper that has lines on it. Also, the drawing does need to be done with pencil. That allows you to make corrections as you draw. A lot of these drawings that you're going to be doing are going to be things that you might need to end up going back and erase. According to the directions, it recommends that you draw lightly at first and then make those drawings, the lines bolder as you're sure that it's accurate. All right, the second item on the list, it says one drawing per piece of paper is allowed unless given specific directions. I personally would like you guys to, if you're doing more than one microscope drawing, to put 2 per side, because you can move and adjust this so that you have room to put one drawing up here at the top. So you could have one drawing up here at the top and then another drawing further down on the page. And then the same thing on the back side, you could do that. So for me, you can do 4 microscope drawings per page. All right, the third item on there, if you are doing just a single drawing like you'll be doing for a letter from Leeuwenhoek, then it should be equally centered between the top and the bottom of the page, and it should be off-center to the left to allow for labels to be on the right-hand side. So notice that I did not put my circle right in the middle of the page, rather it's off-center to the left because I'm going to be putting all of these labels here to the right. All right, item number 4 is more about if you're drawing something such as a plant or something that I'm having you do. So for now we're going to skip that item. But if we look down, number 5 is something that is very applicable. It is something that we have to look at. So if we take a look once again at the stick figure guy, it does say that your drawing needs to have a title, and the title should be on a line centered slightly below your drawing. Please use a ruler to make this line so that it is nice and neat and straight. Also, number 6 applies. A drawing made from images observed through the microscope should be placed in a petri dish circle to represent the field of views. So this circle here was made with a petri dish outline, so it's not something that you are just haphazardly drawing a circle. You're not doing that. The size that you need to use is the petri dish sized circle. And then finally, number 7, for the microscope drawing itself, you do also need to include the magnification. This is super important for somebody that is reading your work to know, how big is this image? How big is this thing that you're taking a look at? So without that information, you wouldn't know that this stick figure guy that I drew here is super tiny, because we're seeing him 1,000 times bigger than what he really was. And so you're going to be learning in the microscope lab how to calculate this total magnification using our compound light microscopes, but that does need to be included in parentheses next to the title. For the letter from Leeuwenhoek, we don't have that information. We don't really know what Leeuwenhoek was using. So I'm just looking for any approximation of any kind of reasonable number in there. I'll tell you that our microscopes range from 40x to 400x. Those are the ones that we're going to be using with our dissecting microscopes. All right, next we move on to the labeling. all the labels do need to be placed to the right side of the drawing. So we're not going to have any labels off to the left-hand side of the drawing at all. And then you're going to use lines to connect the drawing to the label. These drawings need to be parallel to one another, so they're not going off in all kinds of different directions. We're not going to do that. Instead, these lines do need to be parallel to one another. And they need to be, once again, use a ruler in order to make those lines. The right hand, now this is the thing that is the pickiest little thing, and it might seem just kind of silly, but it does really make a difference as far as the neatness is concerned. And yes, there's a point on this in the grading of the letter from Leeuwenhoek, that your labels should all start at the same vertical plane. Okay, so if this is a straight line up and down here, so that you don't have some of these lines being shorter and others longer. They should all end at the same vertical plane. And then finally, you can't cross the label lines, and if you have some items that are pretty close together, like my eye and my nose, they're pretty close together and you shouldn't really crowd them either. So it is acceptable to do like I did here with the nose, where you have your label line initially coming down at an angle. That's a pretty steep angle, but let's say initially coming down at an angle before you straighten it out in order to separate it out. So that could be either down, or it could be, you could have it going up before it goes straight out too. But these end label lines, you know, at the part where it goes straight out, those do need to be parallel to all of the others. So doing something like I did with the nose label is acceptable. It is not acceptable just to take it and, you know, make it a straight diagonal line. And then it also wouldn't be acceptable to have label lines crisscross one another. They do not cross. All right, so I think those are the directions for how to draw images using the microscope. Now you're going to be, for the letter from Leeuwenhoek directions, you need to read what Leeuwenhoek, he wrote this in the 1700s, and so it's going to have some of the wording, you know, that is pretty typical to the 1700s. He was actually a shopkeeper, but he was a scientist on his own, a naturalist, and he was one of the very first people to develop a microscope of his own. He and another guy named Robert Hooke were alive at the same time, and they both developed microscopes at the same time. Actually, we're kind of rivals of one another. You know, my microscope's better than yours. So keep in mind that some of the writing is going to be not really modern writing, and you need to do your best to interpret what you think he saw underneath the microscope for what he was taking a look at in the water that he was looking at underneath the microscope. Don't forget to do the microscope drawing rules as I just indicated, and also do not forget to add your labels as indicated on the assignment sheet.